Audio Jungle.
So product overview. As you all know, this is one of our most popular products, the UniFi access points. That's kind of the bread and butter of the entire UniFi network. Most of you here must have had experience with UniFi access points, but just so you know, there are obviously a range of access points. These aren't all of them, but these are some of the main ones here in terms of people using it here in India. So we have the UniFi UAP AC Lite, which is the smallest access point. It's a 2x2 MIMO dual 2.4 as well as 5 gigahertz. You should know that all our access points are dual band. All our access points are 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. So most of the information here is what you can read, but we go from the UAP AC Lite to the UAP AC LR. Then we go on to the UAP AC Pro, Nano HD, and XG is one of our kind of highest performing access points, which has max users of 750 users per access point, and also has a 5 gigahertz radio rate of 1733 Mbps.
Right. I would also like to add that the UAP-XG has a dedicated backlink for wireless uplink. Unlike the other APs which use its own radio, that is the 5 GHz radio for wireless uplink, the UAP-XG has a dedicated 5 GHz uplink which works at 733 Mbps. So that way you'd be able to get better speeds over APs that are wirelessly uplinked.
But obviously, as you go towards the right, the bigger the AP gets in terms of the speeds offered and users supported, the price also increases. Some of the most popular access points we have are the UAP AC LR and the UAP AC Pro. Those are some of the most popular access points we have here, but increasingly the Nano HD as well as the HD are also becoming very popular. Both Nano HD and HD are for high density environments. So if you have a lot of users connecting to your access points, those are some of the access points you can go with. We also have two outdoor Wi-Fi access points. Many installations of ours happen outdoors. So we have the UAP AC Mesh and the UAP AC Mesh Pro. One thing is that you can also buy an external antenna called the UME-D, which is the SKU, which can be attached to the UAP AC Mesh to kind of increase coverage for the access point.
Right. I would like to add further, the mesh APs, they also support multi-hop. So if you have multiple APs that are in a particular area, and if there's a wirelessly uplinked AP, it will automatically hop on to any of the APs which are providing better signal to them. So that way, if you have multiple APs, the link won't go down. So the uplinked AP will automatically connect to one of the wired APs which provides a better signal.
We also have a few new products here. One new product is the UniFi Flex HD. We're going to just show you a quick video on getting a better idea on how this product can be used, and then we'll go quickly into some of the technical specifications. So as you can see in the Flex HD, it supports a number of different installations. The unique thing about this AP is that its shape is very different from the other APs, and it also enables you to place it on a table or ceiling mount or wall mount or pole mount. There are a number of different mounting features. See in this example, you can also see the AP is just centrally placed on a table. So these are really good for situations where people want different kinds of access point placements. We also have a range of managed UniFi switches. We have PoE as well as non-PoE switches, all the way from 8 port switches to 48 port switches. We also have the US16XG, which is our 10 gigabit switch. The important thing to note with our switches is that these are the only switches that can be managed with the UniFi controller. So if someone has an entire UniFi network where they have UniFi access points and they desire to manage it through the controller, it's important that they also get UniFi switches for them to continue using the entire system on the UniFi controller. Third-party switches are not supported by our UniFi controller.
Right. So the Gen 2 switches are a new line of switches which have been introduced in UniFi. So these switches are they have better processing, they have better cooling than the previous switches. They are much more quieter, as in the noise level of the fans are much lower than the previous versions. These are Gen 1 switches. And these switches also have an integrated screen, a small LCD in place of the UBNT logo, which was on the earlier models. So the screen will show you basic information about your network, the CPU, and the memory performance of the switches. And the other good thing about these switches is that it has dual power supplies. So in case if you are running out of AC power or there's a power cut, you can power it using any of the DC converters or batteries or smart powers. That is a URPS, which is another product by UniFi from Ubiquiti, which can help you power any of our devices, especially switches. Right, so these are the new models that have been introduced. There's the 16 port PoE switch, there's a 24 port PoE switch, and there are the Pro models which are 24 and 48 port switches. Right, so the 16 port switch has 16 1 gig ports, and the 24 port switches it also has 24 1 gig ports and 2 SFE ports. Right, do note that the SFE plus ports are only included in the 48 port model.
Also, for a complete switch comparison, you can go to our website, switch.ui.com, and you can see a comparison between all our UniFi switches. We won't go into too much detail here right now, but this will really help you see the difference between the Gen 2 switches and Gen 1 switches. Obviously, Gen 2 is now our newest line of switches which will be coming to India over the next couple of months. So we definitely recommend people read up about it, because these are going to be really good selling items to give users enhanced performance and enhanced quality of their network.
Right, so most of you must be aware about the UHG. Those are the two routers that were initially introduced in the UniFi line of products. Right, so there is the UHG and the UHG Pro 4. Right, so the difference is that the UHG only has 3 Ethernet ports. However, the Pro 4 has also has 2 SFE ports, which can be used as LAN or WAN. Right, so all the routers that we have support port remapping. So you can configure any port to work as a WAN or a LAN. So let's say that if you want to use the LAN port, SFE port as a LAN, you can change that in the controller itself and switch the existing WAN port, which is mapped to E2 and E3, and convert it into your LAN ports. And both the routers also support load balance, that is weighted load balance and failover. DPI is kind of a software thing which provides you details about all the websites that have been visited and the amount of data that was consumed while visiting each and every website. The other options are SNAT, which is let's say that you have multiple IPs, they can be mapped onto the UHG, and you can create NAT rules so that it can be linked to multiple internal hosts on your LAN. Port forwarding can be configured by the controller, right? So that's basically DNAT. Firewall policies, the reason we say that it's advanced because it's a stateful firewall, so you can basically filter or block packets based on the state. That is, unlike a stateless firewall which does not inspect the state of the packets, the USGs can do a stateful inspection. About inter-VLAN routing, this is something which is enabled by default. However, using the advanced firewall rules, you can also create restrictions so that VLANs are not able to communicate between each other. The next is site-to-site. Okay, so site-to-site, there are two options. There is site-to-site over IPsec, and there is site-to-site over OpenVPN. And if you're using multiple USGs, there is a third option which is auto IPsec. So all you have to do is when you have multiple USGs adopted into different sites, you just need to select auto and apply. There are no front-end changes that are needed. Everything happens in the background, and a VPN link will be automatically established. So that takes you less than 20 seconds to create a VPN link between two USGs that are adopted into different sites but in the same controller. Traffic segmentation, that is QoS, is basically smart queues. So if you have a WAN link which has congestion, you can enable smart queues, and that should help you deal with the congestion and improve the latency.
One of the important things to note about any of Ubiquity's products, and especially products like the USGs, these are all products that are one-time purchases. So unlike many of the other firewalls in the market where people are paying lakhs of rupees per year to have a firewall on the internet and manage their security settings, using something like the USG or the USG Pro 4 lets you have a firewall lifetime with only a one-time cost for the device itself. Everything else, all these things that were mentioned, are included with the device and can be managed through the free UniFi controller. So this is all a one-time cost, and there are no ongoing costs to manage a firewall with Ubiquity, unlike many of the other companies where people might be purchasing firewalls separately.
In regards to the controller, I would like to add that the controller has a feature of cloud access or remote access. So that way, even if you are not local or present at the site where your controller is deployed, you can still access the controller over the internet, that is from the UniFi portal, and make any changes that you would do on the local controller remotely as well. So that can help you manage your network even if it's set up in a different location.
So talking about the UniFi controller, we'll go into more detail soon, but the Cloud Key is a device that actually houses the UniFi controller. It's a physical device that houses the UniFi controller. So if you don't want to host your controller on a cloud or host it on a server or on your computer, you can always buy one of our Cloud Keys, which you can just plug into the switch, and the controller will be running 24/7. It's a very low power consumption device, and using this you can very easily just remotely access your controller from anywhere in the world. So for larger networks or even smaller networks, we highly recommend purchasing a Cloud Key, although it's not required to use a controller. Our controller is a free controller which can be downloaded from our website. This is a very easy way to host your controller locally 24/7 with low power consumption. And Praveen, to answer your question, once again, the UniFi Security Gateway is a one-time purchase. It's a security gateway, which is a routing device, which has the firewall in it. Ubiquity never has any devices or any services that require a renewal every year. So, and then no firewall services will have to be renewed every year. This is a one-time purchase that you would buy the USG with, and you can use your firewall without any other expenses. So one of our newest products here is the UniFi Dream Machine. It's one of our latest products, and it's been a very, very popular product recently. It's so as you've seen earlier, we've had access points, we've had switches, we've had security gateways, and we had the Cloud Key controller. So what the UniFi Dream Machine does is it combines all four of those devices into one product. So it's a small router as such, which has integrated security gateway. So it offers advanced firewall policies and threat management. It also has a gigabit switch. It has a 4-port gigabit switch. It also has its Cloud Key included. So this itself has a controller in it. So there's no need for a separate controller purchase and no need to host your controller anywhere. This device itself hosts the controller. And then it also has a 4x4 enterprise access point. So it also has a very, very powerful access point, all in one device that is a fraction of the cost if you had to purchase 4 devices separately. So what's important here is that it's a really good device for small homes and small business setups where you have only a few access points, but you don't want to purchase all these separate devices. The UDM can be directly connected to your internet modem, and you can get started immediately in a matter of minutes. You can also then attach additional switches and additional access points to the UDM to scale up your network with no limit to how many devices you can keep attaching and keep extending your network with. Our latest product is the UniFi Dream Machine Pro.
Right, so the UDM Pro is very similar to the UDM. The only thing that's different here is that it has 8 ports for LAN and 2 SFP ports for your WAN connection. So if you look at the picture, there is an Ethernet port, out of which the Ethernet port is WAN 1, and there are 2 SFP ports, out of which one of them can be used as WAN and the other one will be a LAN. The advantage of a UDM Pro is that it has an option to mount a drive. Okay, that's in the center. So once the drive is mounted, okay, you will be also able to install UniFi Protect. All right, so UniFi Protect is a software that is used for managing the cameras. Like the UDM, the UDM Pro as well has a controller inbuilt, so you would not need a cloud key or an additional device to install a controller and manage your devices. And one other thing about UDM and UDM Pro is that they have a much faster CPU than the USGs. Okay, so this way, when you're using services like IPS or IDS, which are CPU consuming, you would still be able to achieve up to 850 Mbps on a UDM and up to 1 gigabyte on a UDM Pro. That is without any loss of performance while using IPS. However, similarly on a USG and a USG Pro, the performance is almost scaled down to 50% when you use IPS or IDS. So the newer CPU is one of the biggest advantage of the UDM and the UDM Pro.
This is a great device which, if it's kind of for large networks, this is a great device to have because it has a switch, it has its firewall, and also it has an inbuilt UniFi controller as well as a UniFi Protect controller, which is for our cameras. So this is the newest UniFi device that we have in the market, and right now we're on the website. So after this, I definitely recommend people to look at the UDM Pro website because this is a very big device that's going to disrupt not just the firewall market, but also improve experiences for customers that are currently using UniFi and also want to integrate UniFi Protect into the same network. We also have a range of UniFi cameras that you may have heard about. We recently launched our range of cameras, the G3 Bullet, the G3 Dome, the G3 Flex, and the Pro. All these cameras offer 1080p resolution and have various different mounting options as well as infrared and low light sensitivity options. All these cameras can be managed through the UniFi Protect software, which comes inbuilt into the Cloud Key Gen 2 Plus. So the Cloud Key Gen 2 Plus is a device that has the UniFi controller inbuilt as well as the UniFi Protect controller inbuilt. And once you have that device connected to your network, you can access your videos from anywhere in the world, either log into your UniFi Protect account or even download the UniFi Protect mobile app. And you can access your live videos as well as your video history. These cameras are indoor as well as outdoor cameras. As you will see, the G3 Pro is a weatherproof IP67 weatherproof camera.
Right, so we're just going to interrupt and answer some of the questions that were asked in chat. Praveen Kumar, you had a question. Praveen Kumar's question was already answered. Ashish Gupta, you wanted to know if USG Pro would act as a full-fledged firewall. Not sure what you mean by full-fledged, but like I said, it's a stateful firewall. So you can create any kind of firewall rules that depends upon the packet states. Apart from that, like I said, the firewall also supports DPI. So you can also create DPI-based firewall rules on the USGs as well as the UDM. Apart from that, it also supports IPS, that is intrusion prevention system, as well IDS, that is intrusion detection system. And it also has a support for GeoIP, which is in case if you want to block traffic from a particular country, you can create rules so that traffic from that entire country will be blocked. That is the traffic to that country or from that country, that is up to you. I hope that answers your question. Praveen Kumar, you wanted to know about the UDM Pro. Yes, it's one device. The device has an internal drive as well as an option to mount a secondary hard drive, which can be used for installing all the UniFi softwares. That is UniFi Protect, UniFi Access, or UniFi Talk, which is the VoIP software.
So for UDM Pro, we definitely recommend people look at our website. It has a lot of information about UDM Pro. It's kind of one device itself which integrates a number of different things, and not just current but also future things like the access controller and the talk controller, which is in beta, which will help you also integrate future ubiquity devices such as access, such as our VoIP phones, and also current products like our cameras and our access points, all in just one device. So it's a controller that has all these integrated in it, and not just a controller but also it's a switch, and it also has very advanced firewall policies that you can manage through it. This is an example of how in the future your UDM Pro could, well, this is a current example of how the UDM Pro can connect to a switch, can connect to your devices, can connect to your cameras, can connect to access points. Again, there's a lot more information about this online and on the data sheet, so we recommend you to look at that after this presentation.
Right, Vikas Singh, to answer your question, IPS and IDS can detect ransomware, but it will depend upon the signatures that have been built into it. So if there are some newer signatures which are not in the database, there might be some cases where the ransomware might go undetected. And to add to it, the signatures are updated every 24 hours. So, and this happens automatically in the background. So most of the newer signatures should have the latest threads that have been included in it automatically. And in regards to hacking a server when using RDP, that is something that the USG or the UDM will not protect you against.
Dhaval, you had a question on the outdoor devices. These are our two outdoor devices, the UAP-AC Mesh and the UAP-AC Mesh Pro. The Mesh supports a maximum of 60 users and the Mesh Pro supports a maximum of 120 users. So depending on your needs, Prasad, I saw you also have the same question. Depending on your needs, both devices are really good devices for outdoor. If it's a smaller outdoor environment and you don't expect too many users, the Mesh is also obviously the cheaper device that you can go with. It does support fewer users and slower speeds, but it can be very good if you just have a handful of users there. But for larger outdoor settings, we're expecting around 80, 100 users or so, or even more. We definitely recommend going for the UAP-AC Mesh Pro. It has 3x3 MIMO on both bands, as opposed to the 2x2 MIMO that the UAP-AC Mesh has, and also supports higher aggregate throughput. as you can see in the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz radio rate. Dhaval, you also had a question about how, if there are more than 60 users, how will traffic divide between devices? We're going to get onto that. We're going to get talking about load balancing at a future point in this presentation. So your questions should be answered there.
Praveen, in regards to application filtering, that is something which is possible, but the list of applications are limited. Only the ones that have been added to the DPI signatures can be filtered or blocked. So that is also related to the question that Bimla asked. If you can, I'm sorry, Vikas saying, if the gateway can block YouTube or Google, yes, it can block YouTube, but as you must be aware that most of the Google services are tied to each other. So when you block YouTube, there is a possibility that other services might be affected because of the Google services being blocked. But yes, when you block YouTube, YouTube will be blocked and you should be able to use the web version of Gmail. Bimla, in regards to your question about software controller limit, there is no such limit for devices or users. It all depends upon what the controller is running on and how many users you have. So basically, the controller is something which collates data and keeps all the statistics that have been reported by all the devices. So more the devices, there will be more data that is generated. So you will need a device that can store a large amount of data. For example, UDM Pro or Cloud Key Gen 2 Plus, which has an option of adding an external drive, would be best suited if you're having over 1,000 clients in your site or your network.
I just want to clarify that these outdoor devices are outdoor access points. They are not point-to-point, point-to-multipoint devices. I know there's a question about how many kilometers. These devices won't have range in kilometers. For that, we'd have to look at our Air Max devices, which we would talk at a later date. Right now, we're only talking about our indoor UniFi access points. So these are outdoor access points and not point-to-point devices. We have a separate range of Air Max, which have point-to-point devices.
Harish, in reference to your question, the rules that we create, any firewall rules, either on the USG or the UDM, are all signature based. That is, even the IPS and IDS is signature based. We do not have a feature that will scan or filter traffic based on behavior.
And Junaid, as of now in India, we don't have any 4G SIM-based outdoor or indoor devices available. Okay, moving on. Thanks to you all for your questions. We're going to move on to device selection. Here we're going to talk a bit more about what do you have to keep in mind when selecting the right UniFi device.
So basically, we would need to make sure that we understand the requirements that we have for the different scenarios that we see. We need to make sure that we are using the right kind of frequency for the available clients that are going to be connecting to your Wi-Fi network. The clients which would be connecting, are they supporting MIMO technology, which is single-user MIMO or multi-user MIMO? If at all you have multi-user MIMOs, they can be used on HD devices. The number of supported users, again, it's not a hard limit to have 60 users or 120 users, as shown in our data sheets. These are tests which have been done, and these have been the best ideal situation, clients which are connected to the APs. So no hard set limit over here, but you can connect more than those devices, almost more than 200 devices. However, that is going to affect your throughput overall. Again, looking at the different clients that would be connecting, we would need to understand how many clients, what are the different types of clients which are going to connect. We need to make sure that if at all we are looking for 2.4 gigahertz clients, these would be having slower speeds, but the range of this, the radio which is there in the APs are going to provide a longer range as compared to 5 gigahertz. When we talk about 5 gigahertz, we are talking about faster speeds. If we want the clients to have better speeds, more than what 2.4 gigahertz can ever think about, we can use 5 gigahertz radios. So MIMO technology is one of the technologies which has been implemented by IEEE standards. This is basically having multiple antennas on one particular access point. These antennas are then used for different streams to go ahead and provide connectivity or transfer traffic to different clients which are supporting these streams. When we talk about multi-user MIMOs, these access points, which are HD access points, they will go ahead and support multiple clients at the same point of time, which means that they would be sending out streams to different clients at the same point of time. This is called multi-user MIMO, which is the use of multiple antennas which are integrated on the access points, and this actually helps out a lot with throughput. There is a lot of differences with single user MIMO, because single user MIMO is going to be having multiple antennas, but still will be able to communicate only with one particular client at a point of time. However, multi-user MIMO can communicate with a lot of different clients. So if you see the example on the screen over there, you can communicate with a laptop, which is going to be a 3x3 MIMO, which means it's using three antennas from the same access point communicated in the same direction. And then again, the speeds are going to be much more higher than what a 1x1 MIMO device, which is shown as a mobile phone over there. So the UAP AC HD product line that we have, the different models that we have for AP HD supports multi-user MIMO. The example clearly shows that you would be able to communicate with multiple clients at the same point of time. However, this is not really this cannot be done on all the clients, because the client should also support multi-user MIMO at the same point of time to take advantage of this new feature that we have from IEEE.
So, as mentioned earlier, this is one of our products called the UniFi AC HD. It has multi-user MIMO. So unlike on the left, where you see single user MIMO, where there's one stream with one device at a time, there's multi-user MIMO here, which actually supports multiple streams with multiple devices at a time. So this is extremely helpful for larger settings like auditoriums, stadiums, conference rooms, etc., where you're going to expect many users using internet at the same time. So not just the UAP AC HD, but we also have the UAP AC Nano HD, which has multi-user MIMO. The Nano HD is one of our fastest moving devices. The advantages there is that it's a much smaller device than the UAP AC HD. In fact, it's actually the smallest device we have, smallest access point we have. In addition to that, it also has it's HD device on top of that, so it is suitable for high density environments, like think about exhibition halls, conference rooms, auditoriums, etc. The Nano HD is one of the highest ever devices that we have in terms of performance to price ratio. So for the price you'd be paying for Nano HD, the performance you get is one of the highest in the market. One more thing you look at when deciding which device to use is throughput.
Okay, so since we talked about UAP HD, UAP HD is a line of products. To be honest, there are like 4 different types of models which are available: Nano HD, UAP HD, the Flex HD is also one of the models under the HD. When we talk about HD, we are talking about IEEE standards, which are for 802.11. 802.11, and this is basically for the Wave 2, which is available right at this point of time. So if you look at these access points right now over here, you would see the difference in the speeds which are available for 2.4 gigahertz radios as well as 5 gigahertz radios. If you look at HD and XG, they have the maximum throughput which is available for 2.4 gigahertz as well. Now this is again the aggregate speeds or throughputs that you could get. which means that is the combined speed of all the clients, which would be up to 800 Mbps for 2.4 gigahertz radios. As well as for 5 gigahertz radios, again, the XG, since we talked about this, it is having a couple of radios in it, which will be useful for adding twice as much as clients, which means that it will have an aggregate throughput of 1733 per 2 radios.
And one more thing in the UAP XG, Ashish, I think you asked about it. So the unique thing about this device is that it also has an additional 5 gigahertz radio, which can be used for meshing. So if you actually have a wireless uplink setup, which we'll get to in more detail, you can actually use that external radio just for the wireless uplink, and then use another radio for the users, which really helps in performance of the UAP XG.
Apart from that, UAP XG is also consists of a couple of LAN ports. Now, one of the LAN port is a 10 gig LAN port, which is available on the XG, as well as one gig LAN port, which is available. Which means if there is a daisy chain that you want to do, or maybe connect another device to your APs, you have got a couple of options over here, which is maybe an AC Pro, where you can use a secondary port to connect another device, maybe a camera or something which you want to have on your network. The HD also has a secondary port which can be used for daisy chaining other devices, as well as the XG. Again, XG is the I would say the best suited devices for daisy chaining, as well as adding more content or adding more devices to your network. Vikas, I think there is a question that you asked: how many concurrent users is in a starting device, and how is an AC Pro? Well, AC Pro has been the best model that we had in terms of connectivity, in terms of stability, and also in speeds. So again, the number of max users when we talk about this is what we have tested in our labs to find out how many maximum clients can give the best kind of throughput. However, you can add more devices which will help you connect to the network. However, the throughput is going to be a little lesser than we expect. So there is no hard set limit again for any kind of concurrent users for any of the devices that we have. However, it depends on the requirement that we have relating to throughput. Sunil and Gorty, about hotspot, we would get back to you in a bit when we talk about the controller.
As you can see, max users in the starting device, which is the UAP AC Lite, we've set max users at 60, but as mentioned earlier, there's no hard set limit on max users or concurrent users, so it really depends on the usage. What we recommend is the maximum is 60 users for the UAP AC Lite, and then going all the way to 750 users for the UAP XG. But once again, it really depends on the throughputs desired and generally the network available, and that depends on, yeah.
So when we talk about max users, guys, we really need to understand what is our requirement. Is it a requirement just to provide access to different wireless clients for just the access of it, or to provide the right kind of throughput? For the best throughputs, I think we always suggest to have a maximum of 30 devices, to be really honest, for one particular access points, or maybe one particular radio that we have in an access point. So if in case you are planning for a high density environment, we would always suggest you to look at the numbers which are a little lower, so that you get the best throughput. Beneath the throughput mentioned is the total upload and download. That is correct.
Moving on, we're going to be discussing now on planning and configuration. Here we're going to talk about how you can use the available Ubiquiti devices to plan your network and then also configure and manage your network. This is one of the most important sections here as we'll be talking about the UniFi controller.
Okay, so the best thing about our UniFi devices is that these devices are totally scalable, which means that it is not restricted to 10 access points or 20 access points or 2 switches or 20 switches. You can certainly go ahead and scale the whole network as per your requirements. So if in case you require a lot of access points, you can certainly go ahead and add those access points to the network. So there is absolutely no kind of limits over there as such for the network. So scalability is one of the best things that you can have from a UniFi network. When we talk about scalability, again, we need to really understand that the right kind of configuration and the right kind of planning has to be done to have a scalable network.
And just one more thing, this is where really Ubiquiti comes on top compared to many of the other products out there. If you see many of the other manufacturers out there charge you separate licensing fees for your access points. They may charge you for separate controller fees. You may be paying ongoing recurring fees for your controller which change or increase every year, and you have no real say on how much you'll be paying every year for your products. The thing with Ubiquiti is that all our devices are one-time purchase. All the software that comes with the devices are completely free. The firmware updates as well are completely free. In many other products here, you may have to pay for additional advances in the firmware. Ubiquiti is continuously working on new firmware launches, and the firmware launches can always be downloaded from a website and automatically then adopted onto the access points through the controller itself. So that's one really, really important thing to remember when you're talking to customers about Ubiquiti over many of the other brands, that from a cost point of view, don't just look at the cost of buying the devices in the first year. The cost needs to be looked at from a 5-year and ongoing basis, because that's really when you see the value of using a Ubiquiti product, because after the first time you install it, you're never going to be paying any more fees. And also in terms of scaling your network, if you have one office, say with 10 devices, and you decide to add 2 more offices and you want to buy 20 more devices, again, you won't have to be paying anything more in terms of adding those devices to your controller and managing those devices, because Ubiquiti has unlimited scalability at no extra cost from a software standpoint.
Demo.ui.com is a website where you can go ahead and look at the live controller that we have. We have put in some kind of simulation over there, which would give you an idea how access points can be deployed in different scenarios, where they can go ahead and be placed. What is going to be the right kind of speeds available on the different access points which have been deployed. Just give me a second. Let me just try to pull up the controller. Okay, here it is. So if I look at demo.ui.com, this is basically a kind of a simulation which is done for a couple of different scenarios that we have. So at this point of time, we see that this is for the FedEx Forum. This is one of the stadiums which is there in US. The whole stadium is is kind of providing Wi-Fi for the clients which is available. Now just imagine a stadium would have a huge number of users, and to deploy such kind of a scenario for Wi-Fi, it is going to be a really big challenge. So what you could do is you could go ahead and check this out, and you could see that under the maps, the floor plan over there, you would see that different access points are connected, and how they are providing Wi-Fi to the different regions and different areas. So as I said, the more the access point, the better, for better speeds and better throughput. You can always go ahead and use as much as access points required if at all there is a high density environment. If you look at this, if you look at demo.ui, you can also add a floor plan just to find out what exactly is going to be the best place to mount your APs, what is going to be the best speeds you're going to get, what is going to be the coverage, what are the devices which can be used. You can also use a designer floor plan which can add different materials like glass walls, brick walls, dry walls. You can add all those things onto the floor map, and it will give you the right kind of coverage that is going to be providing by the access point.
So as you can see here in the controller, you can upload your own floor plan. You can upload your own image of a floor plan. Then once you upload that image, you can edit it, you can scale the image, you can add walls, you can decide the material of the walls, the thickness of the walls. And once you put your floor plan up, you can actually place Ubiquiti devices on there. So depending on which devices you want, you have all the devices here which you can place. And once you place the devices, you can get a better idea of how the devices will be on the floor plan of yours, what range, what coverage your devices will have. You can also switch between 2.4 and 5 gigahertz coverage. So even before setting up your first UniFi installment, using the UniFi controller's floor plans, which is under the map setting, that's really helpful to just do a general survey, look at your floor plans, look at which are the best devices you'll be placing, look at what coverage you get, look where your hotspots, where your black spots would be. So definitely recommend people to check out our tool here, which enables you to upload your own floor plan and add devices and design your best UniFi network. As you see, this is a screenshot of the controller where you can go ahead and you can add your own access points, you can add your own switches, and you can see what kind of coverage you're getting. You also have the option to add additional devices then to see how you can improve the coverage.
Okay, the second best thing that we have is another app which is almost very useful as the controller is, to find out the right kind of requirements that you have, the right kind of throughput that you would require, the right kind of coverage that you would have. Is the Wi-Fi Man. This is a mobile app which can be installed on any Android or iOS devices. And this Wi-Fi Man app can help you find out. This is basically like a spectrum analyzer, like any other spectrum analyzers that you use. But this is basically designed by us, and it is very useful when we are performing a site survey. As regards to site survey, there are a couple of things that we need to make sure that we understand. We need to understand what is the requirement, where exactly the devices are going to be planned, deployed. To set up your access points, you basically have to create a test SSIDs, turn on the TX power high, move around to find out where exactly is the dead spot, so that there is a low signal, and you could go ahead and arrange these access points in a way that it is providing the best kind of coverage.
So along with the UniFi Maps feature, the Maps tool, this is a really great tool which helps you plan your network and also understand which are the best UniFi devices. Should you be using an AC Lite? Should you be using a Pro? Should you be using an HD? What signals are you getting? What coverage are you getting? So this is a great device, and not just that, but it's also a device where you can look at other channels, look at channel interference, and check out which other channels are there in your nearby environment. To decide how best to configure your network. Additionally, it also has the speed test, which you can use then at the same time when checking your network. So, as many of you might know, the UniFi controller works based on software-defined networking. It's not a hardware controller. It's not a big box that you're going to have to keep somewhere in your electrical room and find space for, and it's going to take up a lot of space and power. It's a software network, software controller, which means that it's all based on software, and it can also be accessed from the cloud remotely. Once again, this is one of the UniFi controller is one of the biggest reasons why people all over the world, thousands and thousands of people all over the world are moving over to UniFi for their Wi-Fi needs, because this controller is a free controller. It supports an unlimited number of devices, an unlimited number of sites. You can keep adding new sites, new devices, new users, and you'll be paying nothing extra to use this controller. Again, as we spoke about, the software is completely free. You can add unlimited NAPs at no cost, and it's also very easy and intuitive to use, which we will be talking about shortly.
You kept hearing about the UniFi controller. So let us tell you what exactly a UniFi controller is again. UniFi controller is basically the device, the kind of software which would manage your Wi-Fi network or your your UniFi network. If you look at the screen right now, you would see that there are different ways to have a UniFi controller. You can have it, you can install it on a Windows machine, a Linux machine, or a Mac OS. You can have a separate device altogether, which we have created. These are the cloud keys, the UDM and the UDM Pro, which has the UniFi controller on it installed itself. You can also upload the UniFi controller if at all you want to have web access directly to the AWS. You can have an instance over there on the web services like AWS and Azure, and you can access the devices from there, the controller from there itself. This is basically a simple setup that we have created over here, which has a security gateway, a switch, an access point, and a cloud key setup over here. This cloud key is basically the heart of your Wi-Fi network or your UniFi network. It controls everything on your UniFi network. The helpful links down over there are more to do with the downloads which are available, the newer controller downloads which are available on ui.com/download. You can always have, so all of these different controllers that you see, the local machine, the cloud keys, the web-based controllers, all of these can still be accessed remotely. To access them, you would have to turn on the cloud access settings on your controller and then simply go ahead and access it from unifi.ui.com. For creating, for having access to unifi.ui.com for your devices, you would require to have an account on account.ui.com. Sunil, you asked me about Azure. Azure is basically a web service, just like Amazon Web Services. Azure is, I think, from Windows, from Microsoft, and they have like a server up in the cloud where they provide spaces. You could go ahead and install the UniFi controller onto a space. These are all paid services, to be honest. I'm not really sure what exactly is the cost for having those instances on Azure or AWS. However, there is always a possibility for you to go ahead and put up a controller over there, and that would be accessed from the web itself. This application was okay. Basically, on the AWS or Azure, you would have an instance of a Linux, I think. A kind of an instance. It's basically like having a computer on the cloud itself, where you would go ahead and install certain softwares. And when I say certain softwares, it is not limited to just the UniFi controller. You can also have your different softwares which you require to have online, like WebEx services and different things like that. So yes, you can simply install the UniFi controller on the Linux instance of AWS or Azure. And I'm sure there are more web services other than these. We just put up a couple of examples over there.
We spoke about the cloud key, of course, but definitely remember that the UDM and the UDM Pro also now have the UniFi controller inbuilt. The UDM Pro has not just the UniFi controller, but also the UniFi Protect software, which can be used for UniFi cameras. So for much larger environments, or where you want to have all your UniFi inbuilt into one device, definitely recommend going for something like the UDM Pro, which once again not just has your controller, but also has a switch, also has your firewall, and also has your UniFi Protect software inbuilt. So many of you on this chat here probably are managing multiple devices. It's not just your one home network or one client's network that you are managing. You're probably managing a number of different clients, a number of different sites, maybe all over India, maybe even all over the world. The advantage that your UniFi controller gives you is that you can add multiple sites. So you can manage different sites from a dashboard. You can just simply add new sites and add in new controllers to those sites. So that from your one dashboard, from wherever you are in the world, you can manage all your clients' Wi-Fi network and Wi-Fi infrastructure. So if someone calls you with a problem, you don't have to go there physically. You can simply go into your dashboard, open the drop down, select that client site, and manage their entire network remotely, figure out what the problem is, even restart access points, adopt access points, etc. This makes it very easy for you to remotely troubleshoot, especially for people here who have a number of different clients and a number of different Wi-Fi networks that they are managing. And Sunil, I think you had a question if it's a free or paid service. I'm not sure if you're talking about the UniFi controller. The UniFi controller is a completely free software. You can download it from our website. You can just go to unificontroller.com. You can Google UniFi controller download and you can find the latest one and download it. Or you can download it and also put it onto a cloud. So the software itself is a completely free software and you will not have to pay for it.
I think Srini, you asked if it all it is a free or paid services. I think you're talking about the AWS or Azure. AWS and Azure are web services, which means they are paid services. They are not free services. However, what we have is we have an option to go ahead and give our free software. If you have an existing instance on those web services, you can simply install them.